Environment Committee meeting for 2020. And I think it's kind of appropriate that it's the first day of summer, believe it or not. So we're not only celebrating a change in season, but acknowledging the final committee meeting of the year. Welcome, warm welcome to our many participants, observers and participants in our public gallery this afternoon. It's heartening for me and indeed for not only our committee members but staff to see so many of you, very young and not so very young, to be here and really show a passionate active interest in what we're doing in this space in the city and beyond. Norm, I'm going to ask you, are you all right with a karakia? Thank you.
Te inoi, minoi tātai. E tō mātou matui te rangi, anai mātou whakamoi miti whakawhiata ki a koe. Maria mai o manakitanga, he tiaki, he manaki, hei arataki tō tātenei kaupapa I tēnei wā. Ko I karaiti hoki tō mātou ariki. Āmeni.
Āmeni. Kia ora. So welcome also to our Environment Committee members on Zoom. It's the first time I've been in the chair with this going on, so please bear with me if I'm a little bit clunky in the way we move forward today. The agenda, I'd like to... apologies first of all, thank you. I have apologies a full apology from Councillor Naidu-Rolfe. She won't be attending this afternoon. I have another apology for late attendance from Mayor Paula Southgate. She will be here, but just not right at the start. And earlier departures from Councillor Robb and Councillor Wilson.
Two for council business for while we're coming back.
So I'm not a member of the committee, but I may come back later on Zoom if I have to pop out.
Sure, thank you. And thanks for your attendance today too, both Councillor Robb and Councillor Martin, who aren't committee members, but really welcome your attendance today and your input. So I'll move that those apologies are accepted, seconded by Norm, Mango Norm, thank you. All those in favour, please say aye, or raise your hand. Those against? Being none, motion carried. Now, the confirmation of the agenda, I'll move that, but would like to note that the order will be flexible today, largely to accommodate people that are coming and going. And as noted previously, Mayor Paula will be late, but she would like to be here for Nature in the City item. So we'll make that change for now. So I'll move that the agenda is confirmed. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Thompson. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. You're involved as well. Councillor Martin, it was a yes? Yep. Thank you. I don't have it involved. Oh, of course you don't. You're not voting. Correct. Sorry. Those against? Nil. Motion carried. Thank you. Any declarations of interest this afternoon? Nil. Moving on. Okay, we'll go straight to public forum. The order I have here is that we have Mairoa school pupils to address us first. Thank you. Thank you, Adrian. And we have allocated 10 minutes for the school children and staff this afternoon.
Hi, I'm Lucas. Our school is very lucky that we have a gully with a little stream that we share with our neighbours. Originally, the gully was much bigger, but in the 1930s, part of it was filled with soil from the Garden Place Hill. In the 1970s, the gully was used as a PE adventure course, but people on the weekend started wrecking the activities, so this was abandoned and the gully became an out-of-bounds area. At the beginning of 2020, our gully was a mess. The tōtara and kikatea trees were being strangled by vines, and the fences were covered with ivy. Blackberry, onionweed and wandering dew grew on the ground, and the native seedlings stood no chance of growing. Our gully looked disgusting and it felt like it was dying. We decided to make changes, and that's how our gully restoration project began. We got together with interested students, staff, family members, neighbours and experts in the community. We asked everyone what they wanted our gully to look like and how they wanted to use it. We used everyone's idea to create our Gully Vision. Our Gully Restoration Vision has 5 aims: to create an outdoor classroom space, to plant a variety of native trees, to control erosion on steep banks, to create habitats for a wide range of wildlife, and to improve the water quality of the little stream. Adrian from Enviro Schools helped organise a gully workshop that over 100 people went to. We had 4 leaders from the regional council running workshops about the effects of weeds, ways to control them, how to determine the water quality of streams, how plants act as a water filter, and what conditions different plants need to grow. We have used what we have learnt in these workshops to create our gully restoration plan, and this has guided us to the work we have been doing in the gully. Our BOT has funded weed spraying and an arborist to cut down dangerous tree branches. We have done lots of exploring in the gully, and we have really worked hard to collect dumped rubbish, remove weeds, and to plant native plants. Mrs. Yeoman writes a monthly gully restoration newsletter to let our school community, neighbours and supporters know what we've been doing. We have gully workshops every Tuesday and Thursday after school until 4:30. We have had 2 Saturday working bees. It is great to see the progress we have made, and it makes us feel proud. Our gully doesn't feel like it's dying anymore. It feels like it's starting to breathe.
Thank you very much.
My name is Ruha. We realised that over the next 5 years we would need thousands of plants for our gully restoration project, and that these were going to cost money. Adrian from Enviro Schools showed us how to grow karamu from seeds. She ran a workshop showing us what to do, and then these students taught others, and in no time at all we had hundreds of karamu seedlings growing. Over the following weeks we picked out the seedlings and potted them into containers. They continued to grow and have now been potted into larger containers. Next year we will have 500 karamu trees to plant in our gully. We have done the same with kowhai seeds. We scratched, soaked and planted over 200 kowhai seeds. After a couple of months they started to grow and have now been potted into larger containers. We also tried to grow manuka, but this wasn't so successful. This hasn't put us off. We will just collect more manuka seeds and try again. A group of students and one of our dads spent a day setting up our shade house and the old cricket nets. Our caretaker built potting benches and set up an irrigation system. We have encouraged families to send plant containers they are not using to school, and we have visited garden centres to collect ones they don't need. We have been very lucky to be given lots of small native seedlings which we have potted, and our shade house is now full with plants. We have mahoi, niko, flax, manuka, kahikatea, kowhai, karamu, grasses, kanuka, cabbage trees, ferns and totara trees growing. Potting plants is one of the tasks we do on a Tuesday or Thursday after school if it's too wet for us to go into the gully. We have certainly learned lots about growing plants from seeds and how to look after them.
Hi, my name is Nathan. This term, classes have been completing a service learning project, and 14 classes have selected a project linked to our gully. Rooms 19-20 are building bug hotels and birdhouses. Room 21 is designing the entrance to our gully. Kowhai team is creating po, which will become our guardians of the gully. Room 16 are making plant identification labels. Room 15 tracked pests in our gully, and we have found that rats and possums. They have prepared a pest removal plan, built rat traps and have trapped 2 rats so far. Tanikaha team are planning the first section of paths in the gully. Cody team has visited Hamilton Zoo and are now making bird feeders. My class have been making bug hotels and bird houses. We know that in time, the planting we are doing will create natural habitats for our animals to live in. However, right now, we are taking away some of the hiding places these animals lived in because we are removing rubbish like bricks, pieces of metal, plastic items and tyres. We have used pallet timber to create a frame, and inside these we have put a selection of sticks, branches and logs to create a space for animals to live in. The bug hotels should increase the number of animals living in our gully, which will also provide food sources for native birds. The birdhouses will provide a safe place for our birds to live in while our trees grow. We have been surprised how long our service learning has taken us, from researching, pulling apart pallets, to using hand saws and hammers, and for many of us having to start again because our design didn't work out how we planned. We have had so much fun doing this and we look forward to spending more time in our gully.
Kia ora, my name's Julie Yeoman, and I'd really like to thank you for letting us talk today about our gully restoration project. We do have a really passionate team of students, parents, staff and supporters who are helping us on this journey, and the skills and attitudes that this project has fostered will continue over a lifetime. I'm sure the nature and the city strategy will have similar effects in Kirikiriroa, and applaud you as our council for the direction that you're steering us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mauro student. Thank you very much. Did you want to stay for questions from councillors? They might have one or two. Yeah? We will. Well, thank you, Julie, and your students, Nathan, Lucas and Ruhan. Thank you so much for presenting. It takes a bit of courage to sit in that seat and speak in front of a very discerning crowd, so thank you. So any questions from councillors? If we could just have at least. Thank you.
I just wanted to say that I'm totally blown away by all the skills that you've learned and the whole range of things that you've achieved so far. How long have you been working in your gully so far, and how long do you think it will take to get where you want to go?
It's been like 4 months, and I think maybe halfway through next year.
Halfway through next year. It's amazing. Thank you so much also for coming in today to I guess, let us know about what you're doing. Thank you.
Magano?
Tēnā koutou mō o koutou ake whakaro, so I'm just really proud and humbled to see and hear the kaitiaki experiences that are happening at the kura. So I'm really proud of the succession planning around kaitiakitanga, and as the saying goes, every bend there's a chief, there's a guardian. A river of 100 chiefs, which also includes the gullies. So I want to acknowledge the kura for that mantra. Just one small question is, what's the names of your po that you have as the kaitiaki?
So the team that is creating them are going to be working on that over a period of time. So at this stage they're in the beginnings of their journey, and while the service learning projects are for this term, a lot of them carry on into next year as well. So they're just at the start, and we actually haven't had feedback from them yet as to where they're up to. But yeah, it's exciting. I know that on the weekend we had a working bee on Saturday, and we were down in the gully, and one of the treasures that we find, because we always find treasures down in the gully, was a paua shell, and Whaia Oriana said, "Oh, that will be perfect." So she stashed it away in her little kitty for one of the po.
Cool. Yeah. Tēnā koutou. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Martin.
Rules of our meeting, we're only allowed to ask you a question. So I'm going to ask you a question. I think you're going to say yes. Can you confirm that Mauro Intermediate is one of the best schools in the city, and Mrs. Yeoman is a fantastic teacher?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. No further questions from councillors. And look, it's lovely just to see evidence of learning outside of the classroom, and certainly those skills and attitudes will be fostered for life. Thank you very much, Julie. And thank you, Adrian, from Enviro Schools. Kitty Wallace. Kitty, you'll have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou katoa, Environment Committee Chair Margaret Forsyth, Honourable Councillors, HCC staff, mana whenua, and my fellow citizens. Ko Kiri Joy Wallace, toko ingoa. I am here to support the nature and the city strategy by telling you a story that begins with me and ends with all of you. I moved to Kirikiriroa, Hamilton, and completed my PhD in urban ecology at the University of Waikato because of the incredible ecological restoration work occurring at Waiwhakariki Natural Heritage Park. Now, as an academic in the People, Cities, and Nature Research Program, it's my priority to be informed about the latest in making thriving, green cities full of biodiversity that benefits people. I've learned of the many positive impacts that come from incorporating green space into the lives of city dwellers. And as my career has progressed, I've watched Kirikiriroa Hamilton grow in some really delightful ways. I think one of the best ways it could now grow sits before us today, the nature and the city strategy. Why do I think the strategy is remarkable? By approving it, we'll join the ranks of the most progressive international cities which have adopted a holistic, long-term approach for the well-being of their citizens. They get that nature is a vital part of a healthy city and that humans are part of nature. Those in the room who appreciate Te Ao Māori already embrace this perspective. You can find some really fantastic info in the strategy, so I don't have to go through all of it now, but I will reiterate some salient points that may address some concerns people have about increasing funding for environmental initiatives. These points in favor of greening cities are actually now established beyond all doubt, causing a reprioritization in many city councils around the world. We now know that investing in restoring city green space addresses multiple societal problems efficiently and economically as well. Research shows that urban nature supports people's mental and physical health, thereby reducing the rapidly growing burden on the health system. More green spaces actually drop crime rates, and social cohesion and real estate values increase. Further benefits, including what we call ecosystem services, are not always directly tangible, but they actually have enormous cumulative cost savings, and we shouldn't ignore them. An aspect of the strategy I love most is the initiative to win hearts and minds, so that's in outcome area 3. Yes, we need more trees, but more so, we need a cultural paradigm shift towards being environmental kaitiakitanga, to foster a healthy environment for us and our tamariki. It really is about growing a love affair with nature. We need to create opportunities for people to connect emotionally with nature, essentially to rediscover their home in it, and a desire to care for it will follow that. This will help achieve the target of having 10% native ecosystem land cover by 2050, aligning with the recommendations in the draft National Policy Statement on Indigenous Biodiversity. By adopting this strategy today, you know you are aligning with many other council objectives, but you would also be aligning with a much broader national and international context. This is the direction that smart cities are going, so let's not get left behind. And so my story ends here with this proposed strategy sitting before you, the Environment Committee. I exhort you to approve this strategy with full required funding attached to deliver and continue it in the LTP. It's a legacy project you get once in a lifetime, and we as Hamilton whānau are counting on you to courageously make the most of it. Ngā mihi nui and mōri ora.
Kia ora. Questions from councillors? None from Zoom either. Thank you very much, Kerry.
My pleasure.
Really appreciated your delivery. Thank you. Hawaru and Harvey from Go Eco. Tēnā kōrua, 5 minutes.
Tēnā koe.
Thank you.
Tēnā koutou katoa. He mihi nui kia koutou katoa. He mihi nui kia rangatira o tēnei rohe kingi tuhetia. He mihi nui ki ngā mana whenua o te rohe, Ngāti Wairere, Ngāti Haua, Ngāti Mahanga, Ngāti Norera, Ngāti Koroki o Kahukora, Ngāti Tamanui a Po. Norera, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Hawaru Masters Brown. Go Eco supports the draft Nature in the City strategy and the draft implementation plan. Go Eco live te Treaty o Waitangi as primary text to be read alongside he whakaputanga o te rangatiratanga o no te rini. We acknowledge and maintain that hapu in Aotearoa never ceded tino rangatiratanga. We recognise the role of mana whenua and support Māori to realise katiakitanga in their rohe. We understand that nature in the city supports this kaupapa. Go Eco takes guidance from Waikato Tainui Environmental Plan, Tai Timu, Tai Pari, Tai O, and the Mamai Aroha o Kingi Tāwhio. It is awesome to have a strategy for our city that does the same. I'd like to thank you as for my role as you supported and I'm HCC funded as the Weed Buster for Gully Restoration projects. The 100,000 that you invested into work on the ground in the gullies through the annual plan is making a big difference, and it is a signal of what can be achieved if the council invests in nature through the 10-year plan. Already a number of willows have been removed in the manga iti and piles of weeds and woods removed from Mangonua. With a lot of gully, as well with a lot of local boundary gully residents owners taking responsibilities of their own gullies and clearing them. There's work planned for clearing up White Street of AJ, at the end of White Street, end of AJ Sealy, and some privet removal in Hammond Bush. I'm setting up plans of correction volunteer groups at Rangatahi to undertake work in the Mangonua and getting our health and safety in place. This is the difference that even a small amount of funding can achieve. My vision for gully restoration is to have our rangatahi and our local communities active and employed to encourage and promote future generations of biodiversity. We encourage you to invest into nature in our city as part of the 10-year plan and put implementation plan into action.
Kia ora koutou. My name is Harvey. I really appreciate the chance to speak today. I am a Kirikiriroa local, even though my accent is from England. I've recently started at Go Eco as a biodiversity coordinator, and my focus is on Project Echo and Predator-Free Hamilton, which means my role focuses on peka and also predator control in the city. As an organisation, Go Eco supports the establishment of a monitoring and reporting program that incorporates Mataronga Māori and Western science. There are community groups already working up and down the river and in the gully systems with and beyond Kirikiriroa boundaries. Future work will need to continue to fund those projects and to encourage those projects and support those projects. Kirikiriroa is home to Pekapeka tōroa, which is long-tailed bats, one of 2 native bat species in Aotearoa. Pekapeka rely on the gully systems and the Waikato River to thrive, as they're like open spaces and forests. With past funding, Project Echo has done some bat monitoring in Kirikiriroa, but we would like to do more, and so future funding within the Nature and City should consider funding more bat monitoring. We also want to control pet predators as best we can. So again, funding in the future should look to support community groups that are already working in the gullies to control predators, because that way you'll have less rats. Fun fact, peka peka are able to eat 1,000 insects a night, so it's worth protecting them. And since I've run out of time, ngā mihi, thank you very much, and that'll be a good way to end.
Thank you.
Tia kina te tai au, kaua e tuki no tia. Tia kina te tai au, mo a tatu mokopuna. Mo a tatu mokopuna. Tia kina te tai au, tia kina te tai au.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Anna, as well. And it's great to see our Gully Eco representatives and reporting back to us about the work that you're constantly involved in the city. And thank you for your hands-on work as well. Questions? No manga no.
Anō nei te mihi kia korua o tira tōropu. I think I anointed the committee he mana tai ao to compliment the Go Eco. So I was just trying to make reference to that name somewhere. But two questions. Have you seen any immediate benefits in the work that you're doing? And is rongoa part of your planning projects?
At this moment, this will be my 3rd week on the job. So still new, but in regards to networking and getting communities involved, it only can get better. Rongoa isn't that just a general, that like kawa and whatnot, that's part of going back to pre-colonial when you're planting. So I'd say yes, because that was part of our native bush at the start, rongoa, but the basis of rongoa can only be implemented,
Thank you. No other questions? Thank you very much.
Good.
Thank you so much for
Thank you for letting us speak
this afternoon. Martin Toop, welcome.
Thank you. Well, when I was about 12 or 13, 14, I can remember in England at Ashton Common, we're fighting on the land there within the kids, fighting amongst the hail bales, making camps and damming the stream. That area is now an area of outstanding scientific interest, apparently. So, yeah, it's a long time ago. There's growing chatter, isn't there, about the climate. It started maybe with the Rio conference, which was 28 years ago. And 4 years ago, we had the Paris Agreement on climate starting. I think it's pretty important, really, that we need to think about the other issue that we have as well. I'm just wondering, could anyone tell me what they think the world population has increased by in the past year? Roughly, with between 10 or 15 million difference, yeah? No?
Sorry, I don't want to be unhelpful, but I think Stevie Wallace put me this.
Is it a rhetorical question or?
Yes, it's a question, yeah. Somebody here might, do you remember what I said just now? What was it? 83 million. Yeah, 80 million a year, okay? Keep that figure in mind and think about it. I think we all need to repeat that one many times over. And tomorrow in Parliament we'll be having our climate emergency bill passed. Simon Upton, the Commissioner for the Environment, for the Department of the Environment says that climate poses the greatest threat to our environment. There's also another Environment Commissioner, and he's acting independently, and his report will be coming out next year. The Regional Council have got a plan, and Hamilton City now has a plan about climate action. It's interesting that the Paris Agreement, it seems to be the basis of all thinking, and it's all about reducing emissions. I think that Paris Agreement needs to be revisited and rewritten, quoting sequestration as equally important as reducing emissions. If we had 195 nations planting trees, surely we will get a tremendous amount of sequestration. Here, I've got a log, bit of wood, a slice of wood. Here it is, it's quite heavy. Okay. How much of this is carbon? What percentage of the weight of this piece of wood is actually carbon atoms? I don't know, but it's a heck of a lot, I should think. Something to think about with trees. So what are we doing so far? And if I look at all these plans for action, they're all much the same. We're going to have electric cars. We're no longer going to burn coal. We're having solar panels. And we're going to see transport looked at carefully. All I see around Rotatuna is big empty coaches. They're called buses, going around empty. I see there's lots of green paint on the streets, on the roadsides of Hamilton, but I don't see many bikes. In time there will be progress, I'm sure. If you can think of driving along Taraka Road, if you drive past Spotlight and you come onto Bunnings, if you stand there and look, it's a total sea of cars. It's unbelievable, a sea of cars there. So we really need to do something, don't we? I noticed in the our action plan, page 86, it says natural environment, and then it says carbon sequestration. Well, I'm pleased that we've got the word sequestration actually mentioned in the plan. I wonder about natural environment, what that means exactly. Okay. What going on is that in 2016, the City Council had 100 park staff and had 10 arborists working. Has there been any increase in the number of park staff who are looking after the trees, etc. around?
Oh, Martin, are you just about to wind up?
Sorry?
Are you just about to wind up, please?
Oh, sorry, I can't.
Are you just about to wind up?
Yeah, I'm just about to wind up,
Thank you.
yeah. I think that's one big thing we could do, and I think we need to play our part in sequestration. When you look at what farming has got to do, we obviously need a big reduction in grassland. Grassland gets very, very dry when the weather gets hotter and hotter.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Martin. Questions? Councillor Dave.
Thanks, Martin. Again, Martin. Oh,
yeah.
Thanks again. You just mentioned the sea of cars you could see in the Bunnings area.
Yeah.
Would it disturb you to find out, as councillors found out yesterday, that there's a plan to double the office workforce in that area and presumably double the number of cars in that area from what you see already?
Yeah, it was incredible, wasn't it? Yeah, yeah. And the flats was on Tristram Street, opposite the park there. There's no parking for them. So
thank you. Any other councillors?
Interesting.
Thanks.
Any Zoom? No, thank you. Thank you, Martin.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much. Wiramu, Puke, haramai.
O te rā tēnā kouta katoa, e mihi ana ki o koutou te kaurihira o kirikiriro. Ki a koe hoki Norm, tō mihi karakia, tō i mihi whakatau i tēnei ahiahi. I'm just going to keep it as concise and short as possible, and I have two ideas to present before the council. The first one is to celebrate our kōwhai event around all things environmental, and to dovetail that into what we had at the time, the plan to have our own Waikato anniversary holiday around the flowering of the kōwhai, which potentially gives us about a 4-week, not saying to have a 30-day holiday off from work or have a level 4 lockdown. But what I'm saying here is that all the ideas and initiatives that the city is good celebrates, because what I've always proud about the city is the point of difference that we have. Waiwhakareke is one particular project, and I'd like to acknowledge Professor Clarkson and the wonderful relationship that Bruce and I have had over many years. But also that all the projects that are now getting attention around the rest of the country and worldwide, I think we've got an opportunity to up our game and look at celebrating that with the kōwhai event as the backdrop, but having our own Waikato anniversary. I couldn't see any reason why we're still celebrating with Auckland. It doesn't come with the colonial baggage of the types of holidays that Canterbury anniversary holiday and Hawke's Bay. They were born out of the colonial times, where this is a very fresh approach to do that, and to bring in something that's contemporary as well, that also honours the traditional environmental history of our iwi.
Wiramu, I'd just like you to stick to the
sorry.
I've got you as nature in the city, so it's more about planting trees and Waikato anniversary dates.
Yeah, so that's in terms of the kōwhai. The other one is about Lake Rotorua, and looking at the possibility of having that as a sanctuary, to maybe incorporate planting more kaikatea, maybe to halve your maintenance bill because of the open spaces that you have where this common is, but also to reintroduce the possible opportunity to, there was a species of freshwater fish that has been extinct since 1875 that was very prolific in this area, in all our lakes and swamps here, called the upokororo. There is supposedly a very similar variety of the grayling, which exists in South Australia, to have possibly introduce that freshwater fish here. If the DNA of that fish matches the upokororo, which are preserved samples in the Natural Museum in London and in Te Papa, it's certainly an opportunity, like the First Nations people of Canada, of returning back to them their salmon. Maybe we can actually have the closest relation of the upokororo introduced into this lake, and to have our lake a freshwater sanctuary, because our longfin tuna is under threat, and along with our inanga whitebait, and they have the kyle, the freshwater mussel, inside the lake as well. So there could be a repository or a possible opportunity to look at our lake in a different way, and to have it as a freshwater sanctuary. That's all.
Kia ora, thank you. Questions? There being none, I'd like to thank you both very much for your presentation. Thanks.
Thank you.
Awesome. Shepherd Isaac. Is Shepherd here? Thank you.
Ko tāpeo te maunga, ka rangatai ki te awa, ko nā te mana o te iwi, ka rangatai te marau, ko Shepherd taku inga wahau, ko ra koutou katoa. I'm just going to get straight to it. I'm just going to show an animation. Some of the story you hear is that first group of children that came in earlier. I just gave them that resource for their school. So if we just put that animation started.
So your presentation is a video for us today?
Yes.
An animation, thank you.
I'm nearly 500 years old. But the last 60 years have been very quiet. I've seen buildings rise and buildings fall, to be replaced by new buildings. I've seen old roads turned into new roads. People come and people go. Not much kisses flying around. Yes, the neighbourhood has been quiet for some time. As you know, I don't get around much, but my roots run deep into the ground, and I'm quite happy where I stand. Although sometimes I want to pick up my roots and move on. Yeah, nah, all good, eh? I'm quite lucky here at the moment, because in the last 5 years, I've seen a lot of changes around me. Good changes. Transformation from the roots up. Recently, all my Indigenous native cousins have started moving into the neighbourhood. Manuka, Dakota, Matai, Kahikatea, Karamu, Harakeke, ko Tukutuku, and my closest friend, Kōwhai. One big happy family again. I've noticed lately more of my cousins flying around. Well, just this morning, Kazi Tui popped in for a drink next door. Was perched on the Kazi Kōwhai. Had a chat and a sing-song. Oh my goodness. When all the Tui Kazis are together, sure can they sing. Sure, all day long. Drinking too much of that nectar, I reckon. Must be all good, eh? Ah, yes. For the first time in a long time, the bees arrived out of nowhere. Buzzing here, buzzing there, buzzing everywhere. It's a sign. The Kazis are blooming. But the greatest buzz of all, I've noticed people coming together. Happy, smiling, singing, chatting. Why, just yesterday, I got a visit from a young lady. She was with a group of young children. She was talking about me. She knew my name. She even knew how old I was. I think she adored me. All I could do was stand strong, proud and noble. Ah, yes. A thriving community it is indeed. My name is Protocarpus Tōtara. I'm nearly 500 years old. But lately, I feel rejuvenated. At least 200 years younger.
It's a bright and joyful day, just a breeze in the air. The trees sway side to side, the sky, the birds fly on by, the bees buzz around, the
apologies about that. I played the other one, I played really perfect. So I share a lot of story. We believe there's a resource for future tamariki coming through. At the moment now I'm looking for funding to try and create these publications. So I've been looking for a couple of years now, but I keep still writing stories of importance for our community, for our environments. So the trees, our fish, yeah, that's all part of us anyway. Kia ora tātou katoa.
Kia ora, Shepherd. Thank you very much. Really enjoyable. Obviously, a lot of work and aroha gone into that presentation, that video. Awesome. Thank you. Questions? Manganum?
Anō rei te me kia koe te pāpai te tōkana mō koutou ake rauemi, mo te tai au me ki, tēnā koe. Just one question, you talk about the importance of trees. How do you maintain the genetic progeny of those taonga species within the Kirikiriroa ecological corridor?
So in Hillcrest Stadium, because that had buildings on it, there's certain areas where the soils are different. That's why we clean our tools to make sure that when we work in these areas, I know that some of the seedlings are sourced from different areas around the Waikato, and should only be that, just around Waikato, nowhere else in New Zealand. If you do go down to Hampton City Gardens, there is a section there before the Pātaka, a section of trees only grown in the Waikato. So I'm just still moving with it, I'm still learning as we go as well. But yeah, thank you.
Sheba, could you just come a little closer to the mic, please? Yeah, I'm having trouble hearing you. Thank you. Sarah, Councillor Sarah.
Kia ora, Shepherd. I really enjoyed the animation. I was just interested, from your experience running transformation from the roots up, what would be helpful in terms of supporting more community involvement and getting more people involved in restoration work?
Well, getting more workers in the field would be good, but just getting more of the people aware about what's going on out there in their community, in their backyard, around the corner or on the bend, just to make sure that they understand that we have that there for them. But it's if you've heard of it, a lot of people, you get leaders that go in and run it and then they disappear, and then it tends to dwindle a little. I've been trying to train people. You see their passion straight away, then you throw what you have at them or give to them. It's a gift, I give it, and to share that knowledge that I understand. I'm still learning about the Waikato area, but we got our co-months and good orators out there that can actually feed that. But yeah, it's more awareness in our community and on the ground. So, yeah. Cool.
Kia ora, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much, Shepherd. Keep up the good work.
Yeah.
Thank you. Roderick. Roderick Aldridge. Welcome, Roderick. You have 5 minutes, Roderick. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, I'm make my submission.
Again, Roderick, could you just speak into the mic a little closer, please? Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to speak to the councillors and everybody. I make my submission as a concerned resident. I'd like to support the examples we've heard already. Particularly, we need more involvement with the community groups. That's what we need more of, and also I'd like to endorse the holistic approach long term that Kathy Wallace mentioned. This submission of mine is an update of what I did to the original 10th of September City Council Environment Committee meeting. And actually, if you look carefully, you'll notice that I haven't really updated it at all, except I accidentally put a blank page in between the two pages. But that's really because nothing's really changed, except we have had a little bit of progress on actually doing something. So I'd like to emphasise the part in the first page there, that by working with the community and other authorities and government, the council could create a regionally significant asset linking the restored ecosystems and habitat within the city, both land and water, with restored habitat in the Wairau Kato. So we've got all these gullies and various other ecosystems that the council's got, but they really need to be linked, because the fundamental principle of ecology is that a large area with diverse interlinked ecosystems which interact positively with each other will support more species long term than any equivalent fragmented area. So this is a great opportunity to reverse the fragmentation caused by previous developments. And the other thing I'd like to emphasise is taking a whole system approach to ensure positive interactions of all operations over the whole of the catchment, and this will result in benefits of all kinds. So let's turn over the blank page. The council could combine assisting community groups dealing with climate change, enhancing biodiversity, developing strong communities in the one project. And this has many win-wins: restoring biodiversity, giving all Hamilton residents easy access to experiencing nature, sequestering carbon, that's another important one, to reduce climate change, increasing resilience from extreme events and biodiversity environment shocks, and all the rest of them there. And so what I'd like to emphasise is that there's an opportunity to combine a whole lot of benefits by linking all the areas and restoring them and reversing the fragmentation that's happened with unsuitable developments. And the other main thing I'd like to emphasise is the need to attach funding with the 10-year plan, so that we can get started on these win-wins. And that's really the main point, that we can be, as I said in the thing, the council's decisions will set the pattern for the future. We and our descendants are going to pay for our recovery anyway, so let's build the kind of future we all want to live in.
Well, thank you. Roderick, you're about to wind up, please.
Yes, so
thank you.
That's really the main thing. And so I'd like to say that the main thing is a change of attitude, looking at it as an opportunity instead of a problem. And that's take the opportunity to be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Agree, thank you. Questions from councillors among? None today. Thank you. Thank you so much, Roderick. Nice to see you again. Very good. Right, that concludes our public forum. Now we'll move on to the agenda items. So, sorry, I'll just change screens. First one being confirmation of the Open Environment Committee minutes of 10th of September. I'll move that we accept those. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Sarah. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Dave is on. Got that. All those against? Thank you. It's carried. Thank you. Chair's report. I'll take that as read. Any questions? Thank you. I'll recommend that we receive the report. I have a seconder. Thank you, Sarah. Councillor Sarah. Oh, I'll look to the screen next time. Thanks, Ewan. Okay, well, all those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those against. That's a 4. Ewan. Item 7. General Manager's report. Thank you, Sean. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair Margaret. I'm happy to take the report as read as well. And if there are any questions, either I can answer them or some of the staff in attendance probably can as well.
I'm happy to move, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Ewan. Do I have a seconder? Yep. Norm, would you like to second? Or share the love around. Thanks, Margo Norm, to second. Yeah, any questions at this point? Thank you, Sarah. Okay.
So one question was in regard to the sub-regional bat strategy. Do we know what the timeframes are in regard to kind of getting something which can get off the ground, and whether we need to have separate funding line in the LTP, or if in terms of putting a contribution towards that, or if we would be able to cover that with within budgets?
I think Ali or Jamie are around. They might be able to just talk a little bit with the status of that that bat strategy.
So there's a hui this week, which Ali will be attending on behalf of council, and it's still, I guess, in the earlier stages in terms of just confirming the scope of the report. So there has been no discussion around resourcing to date, but within the LTP there is some funding allocated to contribute to the development of.
Could you speak up, please? Could you speak up, please?
Within the LTP, within the parks budget, I believe there's some operational budget to contribute to the bat strategy.
Okay.
So in this next bat hui, which is on Thursday, we'll be trying to refine and define the scope of that, so that after that meeting we'll be able to give you a bit more of a time frame around the completion of that.
Okay, thank you.
No worries.
Thank you. Manganong?
Just in terms of the partnership engagement, you've got the key groups engaged, but I note that the Waikato River Authority is not in the tent, so to speak. Is there any reason why the WRA hasn't been engaged in or with?
No, really kind of the intent of that was just to capture. There was a request from this committee for particularly Regional Council and Waikato Tainui to present at this committee meeting. I was just making reference to the fact that due to this change of schedule date here, we weren't able to line that up. I think conversations with the River Authority are ongoing, and I'm not sure if Charlotte wants to comment any further on that in terms of their involvement.
We've just been looking in terms of on the climate and the border environment program at who key stakeholders are. So we have established a small working group, which is Regional Council, Waikato District and Waipa District around just climate action at the moment. But then we're looking more broadly as to who to then bring in. So that'll definitely be one of our stakeholders. We just had the initial meeting around the climate bit just recently.
No further questions? Oh, sorry. I need to look up there. Thanks, Councillor Dave.
Look, it's a question that arises actually out of both the last two questions, and that is, I was looking at the sub-region bat strategy, and it seems to me that that should be feeding into the blue-green network part of the Metro Spatial Plan, so that whatever we're doing in a sort of specific area is reflected then in the bigger sort of strategy that we're doing there. And a bit like Norm, I'm wondering where the Metro Spatial Plan fits into this. The way it reads is it's a standalone thing, so I want sort of some assurance that we're actually going to be connected up with the other work we're doing in this area, perhaps.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, I believe it is, because I know that those working on the BAT strategy have been liaising with, or been working through Karen Saunders and through the Metro Spatial Plan work as well. If it's okay with you, Councillor Dave, I'll just, after this, I'll sort of confirm exactly how those things are lined up. I believe they are, but I'll confirm after the meeting.
It's a bit like in the transport area, there's a high-level strategy, then there's actions and actions in specific areas that all sort of join up there. And it's sometimes, to be honest, I see the regional council working as a bit of a standalone thing. I'm keen for them to be drawn into this, not to do something, like whenever there's, for instance, we have the issue in Peacock with bats, which is partly being driven because of the RMA. It should be being driven because it's part of our overall strategy to ensure that bats have a good habitat.
Do you want to make a further comment on that, Alan?
So, as part of our early engagement with the regional bat management strategy, we presented to the Future Proof group as well, and Waka Kotahi put their hand up and wanting to be stakeholders in that. So we have had those initial conversations, but as I said earlier, we just need to kind of define the scope a bit further and have those understandings with Waikato Regional Council and DOC as well. So those conversations are happening in the background.
Great, thanks.
No worries.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, thanks. Good question to Councillor Dave. Councillor Pascoe.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. While we're talking about bats, I suggest that in paragraph 10, we don't overlook the work that's currently being done by the University of Waikato on monitoring the migratory habits of bats. And I did send to elected members during the week a video of some work being done in Sanford Park. There's also work being done at Tamaheri, and I understand there are academics, whizzing up and down the river at 2 o'clock in the morning, chasing these little bats to see where they actually move from one location to another. So there's good ongoing work going on there, and it would be a pity if that's siloed away from the work that's being done by all of these other groups in paragraph 10.
Yes, agreed, and thank you for sending that through, Councillor. It was really good viewing to watch bats in motion. Thank you. Mangano?
Yep. Sorry, just going back to the partnership conversation, John, Ministry of the Environment, are they in the forest or the park or the bush in terms of the conversation as well? I'm trying to find a connection. Yeah.
Yes,
and they'll be coming. Yeah. Yep. Good.
Thank you. Any questions from our Zoom councillors? No. What else of it?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, well, that being the case, we'll go to debate. If anybody wishes to speak to the motion. Maybe none. Okay, right. All those in favour of receiving Jim's report, please raise your hand. Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Are those against? Being none, motion carried. Thank you. You've got whipping through today. Right. Item 8, draft nature in the city report. Very popular item. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Maria. Over to you.
Tēnā koutou ngā rangatira mai rāno tēnei kaupapa. E piri ki te ngākau o te tangata mō te taiao. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa. So I'm really excited to bring this item to this committee, particularly given this year. It's both exciting and a relief that we've met our timeframes. I would just like to sort of talk a little bit about one of my key motivations in this work was to see kereru return to our gullies. They're my favourite native bird. I don't think I'm alone there. I love the way they underestimate their weight and overestimate the carrying capacity of the branches they're about to land on. But throughout this work, I found out that this bird is much more than its greedy appetite and its funny antics. They play a vital role in our forest restoration through seed distribution. I'll let you figure out how that happens. So they're actually a really important part of our restoration team, so bringing them back into our gullies is vital. I'd also like to acknowledge everyone who's supported the development of this strategy, which includes staff across our organisation, our elected members among Ai Māori, mana whenua and mātā waka, those involved in ecological restoration and people within our community who shared their voice through our engagement process, which was a little altered this year, but we still heard very strongly that people are keen to see this happen. I'd also just like to bring your attention, we got a little bit of a mix-up in the attachments. So the strategy, I think we've said that it was attachment 1 in the report, but it's actually attachment 2. I think you probably figured that out. So happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Councillor Day.
Just a quick question when you mentioned the kangaroo bird, your favourite bird. Did you vote for that in the Bird of the Year?
I was too busy writing the strategy.
Oh, okay. That's a good excuse. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Serious questions.
Okay. Yes, Councillor Zero.
Thank you, Amanda, and thank you. It was really enjoyed reading the strategy. One question was just around the cross-council collaboration and including that within that implementation plan as a key point. Would that be possible to put in a line around that, because that was mentioned within the strategy as well and would be key, I guess, in terms of the bats and other creating other connections and corridors?
So are you wanting to see a cross-organisational?
Like a cross-council or cross-boundary, a bullet point on cross-boundary collaboration.
So working with our neighbouring councils and other organisations?
Yes, yeah.
Yep.
Very good, good point. Thank you. Norm, manga Norm.
There's a Māori saying, poho kereru, ka tū poho kereru au. So the kereru, the poho is actually the puffed up chest of a kereru, which also translates into being proud. So if you're poho kereru, you're puffed up, proud kereru. So I just want to say that in terms of that bird, but the principle around being proud of the work done to date. So ka poho kereru ahau. In acknowledging that, I just want to recognise, if I can, Madam Chair, Professor Bruce, who's here, Clarkson, in regards to his award that he recently has received with his wife. And I'm proud to stand alongside him and others in regards to the strategy. So I just want to make, you know, the Aotearoa New Zealand Biodiversity Strategy, is that the conservation strategy?
Oh.
Is that a question? Sorry.
We'd love to hear what you're saying. Tell us how.
Okay, right. So you want to repeat that question?
Yeah,
then?
I was just the biodiversity strategy, is that the conservation strategy?
Yeah, so that's the Aotearoa New Zealand Biodiversity Strategy, which was produced by MFE, I think. Okay. And that came out last year, late last year, I think, early this year. 2020's been weird this year, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, catch by. Just one other point of recognition is the Ngāti Hawa environmental strategy. So the Te Tāmata Aotearoa actually takes into account all of Kirikiriroa as well under these settlements. So just making reference to that as a document, I note that it's missing in there. Yeah, good point.
Thank you. Any questions from our Zoom councillors? No. No, very good. Okay. Well, look, I'll move to move the recommendations.
Oh, sorry, there are actually 2 comments on the chat for Zoom.
Oh, sorry, I haven't seen those. Where are they?
I think that was to do with the sound. I can't hear.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. So I'll move the... Oh, well, Sarah, would you like to move it? Thank you. And I'll second. Thank you. Discussion time. Thank you.
I'm very excited to be adopting this strategy today. Investing in nature within the city is one of the best intergenerational investments that we can make, quite possibly the best investment we can make. When we are gone, as alluded to in the animation, the tōtara, the rimu, the kauri, all of these beautiful, majestic trees will still be there when the roads have been replaced and the bridges replaced, and when buildings have gone and come back up again, they'll still be there. And what nature provides is so diverse in terms of providing for our well-being. And the strategy, I think, really encapsulates that. Whether it's somewhere where you can have peace and calm and regeneration, a place to explore and to learn, like we've seen with our Mairo intermediate students, a place where we can have community and community can connect, and work together to create great outcomes. A place, and it's also got other services, including cleaning and cooling our waterways, sequestering carbon has been mentioned by some of our submitters, and economic benefits such as tourism. So the list is long, the benefits are wide-ranging, and we have the opportunity to, I guess, leave a legacy, an ongoing legacy as this council by starting this now. And while it will take a long time to really get to the point where we see mature forests like in Claudelands Park and Jubilee Park, that's all the more reason to start now in terms of really investing in nature. And so this document is the foundation for that investment. And that leads us to, of course, money in the LTP, and that's really where the I was going to say the rubber hits the road, but it doesn't really feel like the right analogy. Where the seeds are planted. And every dollar we spend will bring back much more. It'll bring back, you can't even quantify the value that it will bring back in terms of dollars. But it is so critical. I joined some of the community members yesterday at Sealy's Gully to do some weeding, and I think I managed to do in an hour about 2 square metres, because you had to be so meticulous to get every single little bit out, otherwise the weeds would come back again in that area. And when we think of how many hectares we need to restore, there is a lot of mahi that needs to go into achieving this goal. And so council does need to put that support in to help the community to work together with the community. And to lead in this space for us to get there. But I am really excited for this to be not the start of the journey, because so many people have been working so hard within our community to get where we are. But I think the start in the journey of this council really truly investing in nature in a really ambitious way within the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor. Mangano.
Ia, anō nei te mihi katoa kia koutou. Actually, ka tūnei au ki te mihi kia koutou o tira ngā manawa, whenua, ngā kaitaki o tēnā o ngā piko o tira kia koe e te matua nāu nei kia anga whakamua te kaitakitanga o tēnei rohe. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. I just wanted to stand to try and do a puffed up chest, but my jacket might have hid my puffed upness. But I'm really proud of the efforts and the leadership shown by the kaitiaki of the council and our community. Princess Te Poia says, mehe me ka moi moi a hau kua haunake ka moi moi a tātou ka tai e tātou. If I dream alone. If we all dream, we will achieve. And fundamentally, that comes down to partnership and the leaders in our community that are navigating the pathway and those that are doing the mahi in order to get the treats. So I'm really proud to support this wonderful strategy. I'm really proud to see the fruits of the labour in regards to the energy and the efforts that are gained on the ground and typically in the water quality, which then provides the whakapapa to nurture taonga species and foods in a freshwater taonga. So I just wanted to acknowledge the work done today, and I'm really, really proud of the cultural pou and the cultural compass that's been embedded in the heartbeat of the document as well. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, kia ora.
Thank you, Norm. We'll go to councillors on Zoom. Councillor Wilson, Councillor Ewan.
Thanks, Chair Margaret. Look, I just want to say how much enjoyment I've had being part of this process. I've been astonished by how exciting having an insight into what we could do in our nature in the city strategy that would lead to amazing outcomes, and I fully support this strategy. I really want to thank, obviously, the staff, Sarah, Margaret, for your leadership, and of course Mayor Paula for having the foresight to have set up the Environment Committee. And I think the strategy speaks volumes about it's not just a token initiative, it's well-meaning. And I think it will have some significant results. So Sarah, Margaret, Paula, thank you for that. But I also have to say how excited the community is and how engaged they are. And between all of us, I think this strategy will lead to some really positive results. I know some of my colleagues have been somewhat surprised by my newfound passion for the environment, as I was only on this committee for a very short time, and in fact this is my last meeting. I was just helping out for a couple of months. But in fact, the more I read, the more I understood, the more I heard from Sarah, I became about this. So to my colleagues, thank you. To the community, thank you. It's a great strategy, and I look forward to helping where I can. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your contribution, Ewan. Really appreciate that. Right. Martin, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Am I next?
Oh, sorry, Councillor Paula. Yes, you were. Mayor Paula, you were next. Martin after.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if you saw.
No, my
not. It's hard from there, isn't it? Thank you, colleagues. Big thanks, of course, to Sarah for the leadership she's taken under your chairmanship on this strategy. I know you both have worked passionately hard about it, and you're both passionate about it and work really hard. So, and in particular, Sarah's been beavering away since she began in council, taking this issue seriously. I think Ewan is quite right. It's not a token gesture, it never was in setting up the Environment Committee, because in my view, this is just as much core work as the solid infrastructure that we do, such as roads and pipes. A healthy city into the future relies on environmental infrastructure too, and of course we reflected that in our 5 priorities document, our vision document, which talks of a green city. So if we talk of a green city and we set up an Environment Committee, then it's best that we actually implement actions that are going to bring that about. So we know we've got a bit of a journey to go from our 2% of significant Indigenous vegetation to the preferred amount of 10%, and it's going to take us some time. But the good thing is that we've got this fabulous strategy now to guide us, plus we've got the base ingredients. We've got our gullies, our riverside walkways, we've got Lake Waiwhakariki, we've got a population of endangered and Indigenous pika bats, we've got the tui with the Halo project, and much, much more. We've got some of the most passionate and committed volunteers that you could wish for, out and about every weekend, weeding, planting, looking after our special natural places. In addition to this, we've got our obligations to play our part in climate adaptation. And green infrastructure is an important part of that. It's important in terms of carbon sequestration, of course, planting trees, but it's also important as it filters out some of the pollution and contaminants and provides a buffer from the more extreme hot summers that we have been getting and probably will get again. And also some soakage in times of high flood, which when we look around the country is exactly what's happening in many places. So these things all go hand in hand, in my view. A healthy city relies on a healthy environment. It's not the nice to have, it's not the cherry on the cake stuff, it's base ingredient. I look forward to, through the long-term plan, discussing how we implement aspects of this nature in the city. But once again, thank you, Madam Chair, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Ewan, for stepping in and giving us a little bit of a boost when it needed it. And onwards and upwards. I mean, obviously, as one of the original Project Halo fans in the very beginning, or project groups, I'm really excited to see now how we go beyond Project Halo and reach further and faster than we have as a city in the past. So thank you, it's very exciting.
Awesome, thank you, Mayor Paula. Thanks for your contribution as well.
Thank you, and I certainly acknowledge the contribution of Her Worship the Mayor and other elected members. And obviously the critical time when we are to be judged will be the juggling of resources, which comes through the long-term plan and annual plans. You know, that's the long-term budget, and it's how you get that mix of all the other vital things that we have to do. And obviously I respect that a number of submitters and organisations will be appearing before us during the LTP to give us advice on that. If I may, indulge me, I was wonderful to hear about Seeley's Gully, and of course you all know that that was named after Dr. Seeley, whose claim to fame was he was a wonderful oral surgeon. He even took my tonsils out when I was 5 or 6. But you know, he did work that we now treasure and enjoy. You know, he made that contribution. I won't embarrass him, but I will. Professor Bruce Clarkson, Whaiwhakariki, the Kudos Science Awards the other day, Professor Bruce and his wife were given a significant award. And why I say that is not to embarrass him, but to actually honour the science community. And we're having a lot of reading about, and through Facebook and Twitter and the outgoing President of the United States, where I think we need to value more academic endeavour, scientific research and evidence. And the evidence is crystal clear that obviously the contents of this report, along with the Climate Action Plan, are now factually and scientifically based, and we obviously ignore them at our peril and obviously acknowledge the academic and professional expertise of our staff. So that's all I have to say, Madam Chair. But as I said, our next test is when we get to the LTP. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Thanks, Councillor Martin. Wise words, and it's always nice to hear that historical context from you as well. I would like just to say a few words to wrap up before Sarah has right of reply. I too want to congratulate a number of people, many of them are here in the room, Councillor Sarah for driving this strategy day after day, email after email. So I totally concur with Councillor Wilson, but sometimes that's the work that you need to do behind the things, seen to get things moving. Thank you also to Amanda and Maria for putting together what I see as a beautifully crafted strategy. It really warmed my heart when I read this. It feels more than just a words on paper strategy. It feels like it's jumping off the page and it's really living. And when you recount that one of your motivations and drivers for this was the kiraru, again, it's something that I relate strongly to. I see the birds, I hear the tui every night. In fact, there's a tui right outside our living room at home where I live, and he I think he's a bit, I don't know, light and sensitive. He doesn't know when to go to bed and he doesn't know when to wake up. He seems to be chirping all night, which is just lovely, except when you want to sleep. But yes, the birds are the sort of the glamorous part of the nature in the city strategy. We see them, they're very visual, they're very entertaining, they're very lovable, but it's the stuff underneath is where all the hard work is done. And as presented today by Shepherd, it's the trees, it's the soil, the quality of the soil, it's the quality of the water, and insects, etc. You know, the whole ecosystem, that's what we're on about. And that is what is going to enrich and enliven our communities and ourselves. So this is a beautiful strategy. I can't wait to get it up and going. Of course, we need to get some proper artillery in the way so that we can deliver what we want to deliver, and that will all come at our LTP. So I would just like to remind councillors to keep that front of mind. I love the Western research and evidence that Councillor Martin referred to and how it's stirred in, and I sort of think about getting my hands in a pile of mud and stirring it all together with mātauranga, and for me, that's what I said, that was the part that jumped off the page. Western science and evidence, yes, we need that, but there's also the stuff that you can't measure. That's there, but we don't necessarily perceive it, but we can feel it, and that's what mātauranga is all about. It's about wairua and kaitiakitanga, and I just want to refer to, it seems to have come up in a couple of contexts this afternoon, to I've got to bring it up now, in my chair's report, the whakatauki, again about kaitiakitangi, toi tū te whānau whatu ngaro he tangata. So the land remains when the people have disappeared. Intergenerational, much needed, but something that we just need to nurture day to day. And we're heading in on that journey. We're out of the gates, we've started, and it's going to be a great ride. So thank you very much. Thank you to our volunteers. Thank you to staff. Thank you to Sean. And looking forward to getting up and getting going with the strategy. Thank you. Right. Let's write a reply.
Yes. Something I should have done at the very beginning was to thank everybody who has come and sat through to this point to support the strategy. Council meetings can be a little long. And thank you for all of the hundreds of hours of work that you've put into restoring and maintaining many of our gully areas in Waiwhakaruki. And thank you, Bruce, for your leadership in this area particularly. Thank you, Amanda and Maria, for putting up with all my emails and requests for meetings. But particularly thank you for putting together, as Margaret said, a fantastic strategy and proposal for the LTP. So let's get on with it.
Very good. We'll go. Let's vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Excellent. Thank you. All those against? There being none.
The motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Woohoo!
Excellent. Yeah. Wow. Yay. Item 9. Moving on. Item 9. Waikato Local Authority Shared Services. Yeah. What is our time actually? 1 o'clock. Would we like to take a break? Councillors, would you like to take a short 5-minute break? Or, yeah?
Yep. Okay,
let's do that. We'll take a quick break now. Let's come back in 10 minutes' time at 2:45. 2:45 for Zoom. So we're up to item 9, which is the Waikato Local Authority Shared Services Energy and Carbon Management Program, and we have a presentation, verbal report this afternoon from Calvin French, CEO of WLAS, and Martin Lynch, Energy Manager. Thank you. Thank you very much. When you're ready.
Tēnā koutou, Madam Chair, Councillors, thank you very much for the opportunity to come and have a chat to you about the Waikato LAS Energy and Carbon Management Program and how Hamilton City Council is engaging with it. As alluded to by the Chair, I'm joined here by Martin Lynch, who is one of the 2 consultants that the company engages to provide the service to participating councils in the Waikato, and he is known to you all, and I understand quite well, and responsible for looking after your council under the program. I just wanted to start today by giving a bit of a high-level overview of what the idea behind the service was originally, what we're trying to achieve with the service for both the Waikato councils and their communities, before looking at specifically at the programs, the 2 programs to date. And then I'm going to hand over to Martin to drop down a level and talk in a bit more detail about the current program and how it relates to HCC and what your council's getting out of it. Slide, please. So the slide, sorry. Oh, now we've jumped one more. That's the one, thank you. So look, I mean, councils aren't the biggest users of energy by any stretch of the imagination, but they're certainly significant users of energy, and it's fair to say that across Waikato there is fairly limited in-house expertise within the councils to help manage that energy use, particularly in respect of some of the smaller councils. So look, the genesis of the program was really, given that issue or lack of capacity, it made sense to consider how we might share and collaborate across the region and get some expertise on call as and when the councils required it, and essentially amortise that cost across the participating councils, but at the same time allowing them to have a greater focus towards energy management and look for opportunities to improve, and equally and very importantly to learn from each other. And I know that Martin and Kevin speak regularly and leverage their experiences with the councils across the Waikato and learn from each other in that regard. Slide, thank you. So the initial program started back in 2016. It involved 10 Waikato councils and an agreement with the ECA. So the original program was heavily subsidised by the ECA, and that was conditional on certain energy saving targets being met. The target rate was a saving per annum of 400,000 each year to ratepayers across the Waikato. So HCC wasn't actually involved in the initial program, but did support the initiative. As I said, and were alluded to earlier, Kevin and Martin have been involved from the inception, and the program fundamentally focused on energy monitoring, analysis, plan development, and audits. Slide, thank you. So by the end of the 3 years, we'd met our commitments to the ECA. So we got the funding that had been offered to us, provided we met those commitments, and the program is delivered to the councils across the region 422,000 in annual savings. So you can see there on the screen that those savings came from energy efficiency measures that came out of bespoke initiatives, LED street lighting for certain councils, for example, and then a series of initiatives or investigations into particularly demand management and how councils could be more efficient at managing peak ebbs and flows. Slide, thank you. So the second program commenced on the 1st of July last year. So EECA changed their focus from what had been the case 3 years earlier on, and decided to focus on the top couple of hundred energy users in New Zealand. And while they supported and still do support funding particular projects, or co-funding particular projects, I should say, they were, it's fair to say, less interested in providing a general, a subsidy to a general program such as the one that we were proposing. So EECA left the picture, and as a result of that, LAS, together with Martin and Kevin, and it's not really in that order, Martin and Kevin did all the heavy lifting, developed a business case which was put to the board to put in place a program for a further 3-year term. And that program had three main objectives. The first was that we wanted to crystallise and make sure that we maintained the savings that have been identified in the initial program, and also to obviously continue to identify further opportunities. The second was that we wanted to build on the existing monitoring service, which was part of the initial program but focused on key sites for each council. We wanted to extend that across to all sites within the councils. And more accurately, or deliberately, I should say, measure carbon emissions. And we wanted to really hone in on carbon management and put a focus on developing carbon, or establishing carbon inventories for each of the councils, and actually developing a roadmap to show how those councils could mitigate carbon emissions, and obviously continue to provide generic support. So next slide, thank you. So HCC has now joined, so there's 9 participating councils in the current program, and because of the ECA funding shifting on or moving off, we've actually restructured how the fee occurs. So there's actually 3 components to it. I alluded to the fact that we're monitoring all sites now, so there is a service fee for monitoring all of those sites, and that's through Energy Pro. There is a retainer which the councils pay a flat fee for regardless of their size, because they actually all receive the same service from LAS, and that retainer covers the energy account monitoring, various meetings, workshops, training sessions that Kevin and Martin run for each of the council teams, reporting to councils and knowledge sharing. So on every other month we provide a carbon zero newsletter as a bit of a comms piece and to council staff. And then the third component is beyond retainer, we charge on a time basis for any bespoke work. So the most common example of that at the moment is councils are starting to ask us to help them with their carbon inventories that I alluded to earlier. And as I say, we charge for that on a time basis. From a LAS perspective, it's largely cost recovery. We're just passing on that cost to the end user. I will pass over to Martin.
Thank you. Yeah, just go on to the next slide, thanks. So just one thing I just want to add is that a really key thing with any of these sorts of programs is when you make that investment to make those savings, you need to make sure that they are carried on. You know, often these investments have a 5 or 10 year life, and that was really critical, we felt, to have that second term, because we wanted to make sure that the savings that we'd achieved actually kept achieving all the way through. So that's an important part of this follow-up monitoring that we do right now across the district councils, and also, you know, for HCC, obviously, that's a key component as well. The things that we've put in place, are we still getting value out of them? And if not, what has changed, or can we optimise it or do it better? So one of the other things that Calvin mentioned was the energy monitoring. And look, it's often hard to put a value on that, but the ability where we have all of the invoices for electricity and natural gas now across all of our councils in the region, which is probably the only region in New Zealand that has this. So we have a really good understanding of the energy that we're using, our direct energy. This is the stuff that we have control of. It ties in beautifully with the climate change targets and things that we want to do. You know, you've got to get a handle on this stuff to be able to measure it. So out of that energy information comes the energy and carbon reporting, which we are now able to do across all of the local councils, which we can now look at the councils in terms of, hey, what's their energy spend and usage, come up with a bit of a comparative basis perhaps on what's the energy intensity per ratepayer, or what are the kgs of CO2 per ratepayer. It's not so much what the numbers are, but how are they tracking, so how's it changing. And we've also been able to add in the fleet fuel use, which is another really important emission. So, and you know, the local government is certainly doing some work in that area. So the other thing the carbon report does, it goes out every quarter and it says to staff, hey, this is what we're doing at the different councils. So sharing that information about what's happening. Also, I think what has been quite powerful is, hey, WRC has just done its carbon inventory. Oh, by the way, you know, Waipa is now working on that. HCC is up to here. So suddenly we're seeing that visibility as well, perhaps that the staff haven't had. Hey, actually people are getting on and doing this. We better get cracking and get on and do this as well. You know, this is actually really happening. So I do see a lot of value in this collaboration, and it does go both ways, I believe. So next slide. A little bit hard to see, possibly, but this is just an example of some of the information that we do show. The table or the chart on the left shows the relative energy usage of each of the councils, and the big one in grey is Hamilton City, then Rotorua, Taupo, Waipa, Thames Coromandel, Matamata Piako, South Waikato, Waikato Region and Waikato District. And the energy usage is equivalent to about just under 17,000 households, to give you an idea. Likewise, we've got a picture now of where are the direct emissions coming from at each of these councils, and HCC is up the top. That's on the right-hand chart. You can see there's a top bar there. So the blue is electricity, the orange is natural gas, and the grey is fuel. So, and that's quite interesting, sort of looking down, getting an understanding of where emissions are coming from for local government. We've started to look at, you know, what is the energy intensity per rateable unit. or ratepayer. So, so we've got 2 years of data, and we've seen a 6% improvement in that indice across the councils. We can also look at, so if we think about, well, yes, Hamilton's got high greenhouse gas emissions compared to everybody else, but we've got a lot of ratepayers, so how do we stack up? Actually, we are a little bit higher. We're at 111 kgs of CO2 per ratepayer. Rotorua, by comparison, is 93. And the answer to that is quite obvious. It's because we are using quite a lot of natural gas, which has a high carbon component. And you can sort of interpret from that, you know, if we were to remove that natural gas, that would have a dramatic impact upon our carbon emissions on a per ratepayer basis. So this is the sort of, I guess, the insights that we are starting to get through. Next slide, I'm just going to dive a little bit into HCC a little bit more. Now, what I wanted to try and show here was what has, because you know we've had a program that's been going on for quite a while now actually, and but this goes back to 2012, and it's a graph looking at what is the energy intensity of our organisation back in 2012, and if we maintained that intensity, and with ratepayers increasing, where would we be now? And that's the blue line, and we actually would have seen quite a steady increase. So the top blue line, the orange line is the actual energy that we used, and as you can see, it's quite a lot lower. So we've increased our ratepayer numbers by 13% since 2012. But electricity and gas intensity per ratepayer has reduced by 22%. So we're getting more services, you know, providing more services for less energy input. Now, I'm not trying to say to you that that's all from energy efficiency, because I certainly wouldn't claim that, but it is about the choices that we make around the types of energy that we use, the processes that we put in place, and it's a really useful measure for us to be thinking about how we're tracking and how we are moving towards our goals as we go along. And, you know, the difference between the blue and the orange is actually 60 million kilowatt hours of energy that we would have used otherwise. So if we had not made those changes and kept with that same energy intensity, that's where we would be right at this point. Next slide. And I've just done the same thing with cost, and I think what I find quite interesting is that you know, because of the GFC, we've actually had the global recession. Until recently, you know, it has really flatlined our energy costs per unit. So even though, so that's actually had our costs at bay, but just recently in the last year, we had quite a sharp increase in costs, and that's shown, if you look at that orange line right at the end there to the right, you can see how that has really gone up. Now, that's the, in this case, that's the energy intensity if we were still at FY12, but actually what happened, if you follow that green arrow down, you can see it's only increased a smaller amount. And I guess what I'm saying here is you can see how energy efficiency can really dampen impacts of price shocks on our business, on our organisation. And, you know, I think that's really important to think about as well. And there's one other point I'd like to make, and it's a concept that I've been trying to really work through to staff more recently, is think about energy efficiency as the first fuel. So yes, we have electricity, natural gas, etc., but actually the first fuel is energy efficiency. And so how can we do things more effectively? How can we reduce our energy use? And that is typically, well, it has actually been shown internationally, that is definitely the lowest cost way forward, particularly when you're trying to reduce carbon emissions. So the difference between the orange and grey line, so the green arrow is $6 million since 2012 that would have been spent otherwise by this organisation. Also, our carbon emissions have reduced by 29%, and that's primarily due to reduced natural gas use. Next slide. So this is an example of the Central Library energy use, which is shown in blue, and it's over 8 years, and it shows how our energy use has actually come down, and there are a number of explanations as to relating to the measures that we've done. So as we sustained those measures, what do we do? We turned air handling units off that were running overnight. Who knew? They were running overnight, we didn't need them, so we turned them off. We did a lighting upgrade. So we put in some really energy efficient lights. That saved another 141,000. We put VSDs in, so that variable speed drives which slow the rate of the fan. So we're only putting the air in that we need to do. That saved another 75,000. So that got us all the way down to the middle there. Then we were monitoring it and we discovered that, actually somebody's accidentally left the boiler running on manual for a month. So that bumped us up, so we sorted that out. And then more recently, to the right, you see we've had quite a peak. Now that's due to the fact that we've had a plant failure of some dampers which control the amount of air that go into the building. It has increased the energy usage, but because it's natural gas that provides that heating, it's a relatively low cost, whereas the capital cost to fix that is very high. And so we've delayed that fix, and that's going to be done next year. But this sort of, I guess it is getting into the detail, and I won't any more of this, but it is showing you, I guess, the importance, as I was saying before, of just how we need to keep an eye on what's happening all the way through as time goes on.
Martin, I'll just interrupt. How much, I'm just thinking it's a very full report.
Yes.
And if councillors have any questions, it might be a good idea to ask some of them now and then some of them later on, because I'm sort of mindful that we might lose some of them.
I've got 3 slides, but I can take questions now. Perhaps if I just did this one slide, and then I'll be happy to take questions if there are any at that point. Would that be right?
Sure.
Okay. So next slide, please. Just getting back to the objectives of Waikato LAS, which Calvin touched on earlier. You know, they fit in very nicely with HCC. So objective 1 was maintain the existing savings and deliver further opportunities. And so, you know, some of the measures that we're doing at the moment, for example, we are minimising peak demand at the wastewater treatment plant by running a gas engine. Now that saves us $140,000 a year. We're using biogas to run a hot water boiler. That means we don't use natural gas, so that saves another $100,000 a year. So these are all initiatives that have been going for a while now, but which are really making a big difference. Our building management systems around our buildings, that's becoming very important for getting better control, and we've done a number of quite good initiatives. One was Waterworld. We've just had that upgraded. By working with staff and really honing in on the controls, we knocked $70,000 off that, off the cost of running that plant. Going forward, look, there is some really large energy intensive equipment that HCC has out there, and I think a good example is just recently replaced a couple of very large blowers at the wastewater treatment plant. They will have a significant impact on reduction in energy use at that site. And then as we move more into, thinking about our climate emissions, then, focusing on our fleet, what's our fleet fuel performance, how are we going, and what can we be doing to keep that down. I think I'll stop there, and if there are any questions.
As I said, a lot to take on board, but thank you for the graphs and the information. It certainly makes it easier.
Thank you.
Councillor Dave.
Thanks for this, Martin and Kelvin. I'm as you know, Martin, very interested in this whole area, have been for quite a few years. There's a couple of questions. We apart from this sort of overview that you're doing at the moment, we're not receiving nowadays individual propositions to our council, business cases like the last one I recall seeing was probably the street lighting one about 9 or 10 years ago when it first came, and in subsequent updates of that for energy efficiency moves within council. And so I'm wondering whether there's room for more storytelling, both to councillors and probably to the public. Good, because they're all good stories if you're thinking financially and if you're thinking energy efficiency and that. So I, for one, would like to see more. Can we do more? But examples, get things in the media as well, or even if we put something that we're saving X $1,000, do that. When the media's here, the story could come out about that in public, and we could be I mean, is there room? Can we get that sort of stuff?
Look, I think you're right. And looking back, a few years ago, that was certainly we were doing a lot more work in publicising those successes. So and they're still happening, and there's no reason why couldn't put more resource into that.
Can I add something to that? Because I think the Climate Action Plan is a really good vehicle for being able to communicate those stories and those successes. So I think using that Climate Action Plan and the roadmap to tell some of those stories around the energy efficiency is probably a really good vehicle.
I agree with that, except I'm thinking of the sceptics, and that we have some in this room, Zoom land and otherwise, that used to be sceptics but aren't so sceptical now, who that no matter how sceptical they were about the environmental aspect, were sold on the financial aspect, and it's a good introduction, a good foot in the door for some types of thinking in the community. So I guess that's where I'm coming from, a specific case, bang, this is going to, if you do this, invest this, you'll save that, and it'll have these flow-on long-term effects. The other one, which these don't really tell, and I was looking at the link to the electric vehicles one here, doesn't really tell the role that, say, local government have got as community leaders and culture changes. While we may not be one of ECA's biggest 200 firms, we perhaps have influence above our weight in terms of leadership in the community, and we might be only saving 10 grand on a thing, and it's too small bickies for ECA to be interested by the sounds of it, which annoys me. But if it improves the community understanding of how these situations work in the favour of the environment long term,
demonstration
is there room
projects
for us to play a bigger public leadership role in that sort of area? I'm asking, I guess, in your commentary.
Well, there's definitely room. It's where the council has the appetite, I suppose. I mean, there is as you know, there's the electric vehicle fund, which is administered by ECA. Which
almost impossible to access unless you're a corporate or a very big organisation. I can tell you from personal experience.
Yeah. So there's that. I mean, I've obviously I am focusing on the corporate aspect of it, and so certainly we are looking at how quickly we can improve the fuel performance of our fleet. And Emily Bocce in Facilities has done quite a bit of work on that as well. I guess one thing I see is, and this came from an international presentation that was done here earlier on in the year, is that other cities and countries have really struggled with electric vehicle charging where it has not been coordinated or planned, and it's sort of just been left to go, and then they've discovered actually it doesn't work very well, and we've had to redo it, and that's been very costly. And I am sort of somewhat surprised that that there isn't more sort of perhaps strategy around that, how we would plan that out.
Sorry to interrupt, but that's a good point. I'm just wondering if we can flag that for some future information on how we might through because LAS seems like a potentially good vehicle to coordinate a region-wide approach to that, so that we don't have different charging systems in different places, and my Tesla might run out of juice because there's no Tesla charger between here and Taupo or something.
That's a good point.
Can I also just add that through the just to supplement what Martin was saying, through the long-term plan, I know in the vehicle fleet sort of renewals budget, there is allowance there for the renewals of the fleet to incorporate, be it EVs or hybrids of some form. And I don't, Emily has got far more detail than I have, but that's certainly kind of incorporated into the LTP budget. And there's all the ongoing consideration about how we use car share services as well. But I know in the LTP renewals budget, from a fleet point of view, it's captured in our climate action plan as one of the things on the roadmap, and so that has been budgeted in the LTP.
So let's tell the stories, I guess, tell them more widely, more publicly.
Pending your decisions next week.
We'll be with you. We'll be with you. The other thing, which is regional council responsibility, we're heavily involved in, is public transport, and there's some move, and I'm not fully on top of it, about trial of electric buses and potentially a trial of fuel cell electric buses, and Waitomo Fuel, whatever they call themselves, partnership with Haringa over hydrogen refuelling facilities, I think down at behind the base next to our transport centre there. So it'd be quite good to get a bit of a report on that and the scope for rolling that out, not so much the refuelling thing, which are obviously hideously expensive up front, but the use of it. Or I know Haringa have got a plan, I see in the media, to actually bring in the vehicles and lease them out to operators because they're so expensive up front, that there's a way of encouraging uptake. But I just don't know the details and how much of that could apply to Hamilton and the Waikato.
Evelisa, GM's got some comments.
I didn't set this question up with her.
No, you didn't. I can confirm that. That's a wonderful question, and hydrogen fuel is an up-and-coming opportunity for this city to lead also. And so, through the chair, if you would like to have Haringa come and present to this committee on what they are doing, so elected members are informed, that can be arranged. And in terms of hydrogen fuel into the next year, but also that there are opportunities for hydrogen fuel, particularly on our bus networks and heavy vehicle haulage opportunities. So, but that's not for us, but it's about us, how we lead to initiate those for our city and ongoing use and support.
Thanks, Evelisa. I think that would be a good thing for us to do, to listen to what's available and what's coming up. And look, we haven't, as far as I'm aware, we haven't had the discussion as a council around EV versus hybrid versus hydrogen, and where is the future going, and what are we going to be doing now for the future. Whether, I mean, I have a personal view, but those decisions have yet to be made by council, so that's where and when that comes up, I'm not sure, but we could make a minute note that at a subsequent Environment Committee meeting that we have a hydrogen fuel update. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, just one question. The other question I had, your comment about ECA deciding to change focus and only looking at the 200 top companies or top energy users, I think. That seems to be counterproductive to a sort of taking the leadership in a culture change issue, and I'm wondering whether there's an opportunity to lobby them to expand their horizon a little bit. How is that something a council could help in, for this council?
It's interesting because even since they've announced that, they've changed focus again to really be focusing on high carbon emitting industries, which of course local government isn't a high carbon emitter. And then of course there's the decarbonisation fund for government and large industry, but we're not part of that. Yeah, I mean, and I think this is why we did this is why we tried to join all the councils up as well, so that we became big enough to actually get their attention. Certainly, we can still apply to ECA for individual projects, and there is still the Crown loan funding, but which was, it was interest-free type loans for energy efficiency, but we've not really taken that up in the last few years.
So I'm looking at the graph and what the link on the electric vehicles, which showed as you made more charging facilities available, the sales and usage of electric vehicles shot through the roof at pretty much the same rate. I don't know which one drove the other, probably a combination, but it potentially is a sort of supply it and they will use it situation, and we haven't got on top of that, and we've got the government dickering for the last 3 years about a policy of what was it? Basically subsidising EV imports, new EV imports, which got pulled at the last minute. So we need to try and have some influence, it seems to me. So that's really why I'm asking these raising these points, Madam Chair.
I understand. Look, I'm not quite sure what the answer is either, and how because you're a collective organisation, how much influence you have on other councils, whether this is the direction that we take. I mean, storytelling is definitely an easy lever to pull, but the other points that you raise, I'm not sure of the way forward with that.
I think as the climate action plan is developed, and this will be one of the key streams, won't it? Obviously, transport and how we use that. It's going to be about information gathering, getting that better understanding, and it's a lot of this climate change work and is very new, and it is very disruptive, and there is a lot of expertise that we need to be able to do it. So it's not surprising that we're not, really absolutely sure where to go, but it is really about just really embracing it and getting into it, and drawing as much of that information as we can, and talking, and I think it'll come out.
Can I suggest, just as an action to kind of bring this to a head, that between Charlotte and myself can kind of catch up with Martin and Calvin afterwards. I think what we need to do is identify kind of who those key government stakeholders are that we need to influence and what we're trying to influence them on. It sounds like from what Martin said that ECA might not be that fruitful an avenue, but there's probably other government agencies there that are. So if we kind of, after the meeting, if we kind of catch up and kind of work out what our stakeholder influence sort of plan is in respect to that, and then sort of work on that basis, does that sound appropriate?
Yeah, it does sound practical. Thank you. Thanks, Sean.
Thanks.
Cool, thanks, Dave. Sarah.
Thank you. Just on that, probably along with encouraging EVs or hydrogen or hybrid cars would actually be encouraging these huge utes and SUVs, and particularly the utes, which have a tax incentive at the moment.
Like those ones out the back.
Yeah, exactly. My question was just around indirect energy use. So your kind of scope 3 emissions going into, say, for example, we contract someone to build a piece of road, and then you're actually looking at the energy put into that, their workers driving to and from the work site, all that stuff. To what extent would LAS be able to assist with us in kind of broadening the way that we account for our emissions?
Do you want to answer that, Martin?
we've talked about it, and it's difficult, right? It's quite challenging.
Yeah, there is, there's a number of, there's at least a couple of consultancies that are working on embodied emissions. For example, I think Mott MacDonald is one of them, whereby you might have different tenderers who are going to build your water treatment plant, and you plug in how you're going to build that plant, and out pops, this is the embodied emissions that will come from the way you've constructed it. So I guess what I'm saying is that tools are starting to be developed for that. But in terms of like getting a really good handle on scope 3 emissions, those indirect, where you're starting to look right down that supply chain, yes, that is a very big piece of work, and probably resource hungry as well, I suppose. At this stage, we've really just really kept the focus on those direct emissions that directly affect the ratepayers of those areas. So, but one thing, and you raise a good point, because one thing that will happen going forward, and it's starting to happen now, is that embodied emissions and indirect emissions will become more important probably than direct emissions, because actually we're going to get on top of direct emissions pretty quickly.
And with the yearly spend, then that's where we'd have potentially the biggest impact.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Good question, Sarah. And it brings front of mind for me the reason why we would want some environmental principles, because it can be around procurement, and that when we're seeking contractors, that it's not only a fiscal approach or a fiscal responsibility, but it's that they need to be environmentally responsible and have solid environmental practices as well.
Yep.
So we do have some levers that we can pull to. Cheers, thank you. Are there any other questions? Manganom.
So input, output, outcome, impact, and how it really was enlightened by the scorecard and the framework there. So environmental and economic benefits are gained. Is there any other gains or benefits that you see indirectly through this process?
Yeah, so certainly there is, obviously there are cost benefits, there are maintenance benefits that often arise as well, and comfort benefits. There's capital displacement. So, if we don't need to reinvest in new plant as early as we thought we did, then there is value out of that as well. So, those are probably the key things that get quantified up when we're doing these projects. It's normally quite limited. Yeah, and obviously carbon emissions.
Yeah, the reason why I ask that question is the same situation what you had with the redirecting of rubbish, compost, etc. A big part of the indirect effects is the behaviour change in the community. Yeah. So what the council can do and be leaderful in what we do with rubbish, etc. And what the situation is how the community then is nurtured in terms of that behaviour. So it's a mind shift and a behaviour shift, which is in a significant benefit that you don't normally quantify.
Yeah.
So in like 1 to 2 years, 5 years time, all of a sudden you've got a whole shift in community behaviour around eco-environmental, instead of having a big ute, you've got 12 little scooters.
Yeah, look, there's no doubt that it's challenging, but we, as a company, often talk about how can we make the Waikato councils the exemplar of local government in the stuff that they do, right?
That's great.
And that applies to everything, and as you say, in terms of the leadership, etc. I think that as a collective, you're in a really special place. You've got a fantastic city council. You've got a diverse range of district councils. You've got the largest regional council. You're in as a collective group, you're in a really good space to show others how it should be done in all aspects, quite frankly.
That's the other indirect benefit is that collectivised leadership and showing and leading the way, right?
Absolutely.
Very good, thank you. Councillor Mark, you have a question? No, you don't. Sorry. Okay, thank you. Look, thank you if you've... did you finish your presentation, Martin?
Yes. Oh, yes, pretty much.
Pretty much.
Yeah. You know, look, if you give me another half an hour, I'll be happy to talk. But I've done my dash. You've probably had enough, I'd say.
Thank you. Look, I just had one question, and then we'll receive your report, etc. That was just around probably your terms of reference, and I just need my memory refreshed. It's been a while since I looked at it. So, in this context, are you gathering information and data which is imperative?
Mm.
And do you have the power, or are you mandated to recommend, or are you simply an information gathering piece of the puzzle?
So we, myself and Kevin, the other LAS Energy Manager, we work with teams within each of the other councils, and obviously I work very closely within HCC with a number of teams, and so out of that comes, if you like, recommendations and opportunities. But okay. I guess it's if you go back, perhaps a step up, a more strategic approach. We're probably down at the nuts and bolts approach. So, I see the importance of collecting this information that can lead on to some really good strategic things that could happen across the region, and that, and the whole leadership thing that was just being talked about, which I think I totally agree with Calvin. We're in a really good position to do that if we have the resources and time to do it.
Okay.
Madam Chair, we would we also talk about thinking regionally, acting locally, and so I would always lean on Martin and Kevin if they think there is an opportunity from what they're hearing and they're seeing on the ground within individual councils to elevate something to a regional level, to bring that through the board, and we can push it out through to the councils. Obviously, we have no mandate whatsoever. We can only recommend, but 5 of the 6 board members are chief executives of councils, so we would like to think we're in a pretty good place to influence. And so I'd be very supportive of any of those opportunities. So.
Okay. Oh, great. Thanks for that clarification. Very good. Well, look, we're ready to move to. I'll receive. That we receive the report and thank you both for your verbal report today. Thanks, Norm. Seconding? All those, okay. I've got your attention first, Norm. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those against? No, that's carried. Thank you very much. And thank you both. Keep up the good work. Great work. Thank you. Very good. Item 10, Climate Action Programme update. And look, just a quick word to councillors. We have a quorum at the moment, so please no one else leave the room. We only have 2 items left anyway. Okay.
If I turn my video off, I'm still in the room, but I'll let you know I need to go, but I don't intend to leave anywhere.
Okay, thanks.
My head is enormous on the screen.
Thanks, Mark.
You know, I get really shy in public places.
And also here too, so I am listening and voting.
Okay, great. Thank you. Here we go. Thanks, Charlotte.
Thank you. So just the key thing from this report that we wanted to note was around this, looking at climate change as a risk and where it currently sits. So in this report, we've recommended that this committee asks the Strategic Risk and Assurance Committee to reassess climate change as from an emerging risk into being a strategic risk for our organisation. So by doing that, we are putting it as being really key and putting that responsibility onto a general manager within the organisation to assess the risk. And then following that, we will do the more detailed risk assessment and opportunities review for Hamilton City Council and more broadly for Hamilton.
Great, thank you. I'm happy to move the recommendations at this stage. If I have a seconder. Thanks, Dave. Cheers. Any questions for clarification?
Yep.
Mark?
Yeah, sorry, I have one.
Okay, I'll take Councillor Mark first.
Yeah, look, I'll be quick, and I'm not sure if it's entirely on point, but Charlotte, the moves from the central government, should they declare a climate emergency, does that have any ramifications on us?
Not direct ramifications for us. Hopefully we'll see more action and funding come as a result of them declaring an emergency, which could be a real opportunity for us. So we'll definitely engage with MFE. I'm on a number of groups that have got MFE involved, so we're getting regular updates around what they're doing. So we can continue to update the committee as we receive that information.
So you think we're making more funding from them?
We'll wait and see. I mean, they're also obviously reviewing with the Randerson review on the for the RMA and the managed retreat and adaptation work that they're doing there. That could also lead to more funding because that was one of the key recommendations from the Randerson review.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
Good, thanks, Mark. Dave?
Okay. You went off. Just a question of process about the actual resolution. We recommend to the committee that they note that above. How does that work? I mean, what I'm thinking is we would be recommending to our own council that it is a strategic risk, and therefore doesn't matter what the Strategic Risk Committee says. Sorry, the Strategic Risk and Assurance Committee says, because council's decided, bang. And because this is sort of, I'm just not quite sure about the wording of this.
That's a good point.
We changed the recommendation in the report when Becca sort of noted that to me. So I'm not sure if you've kind of got the current version, but it says that this committee approves that climate change is classified as a strategic risk and is included on Council's strategic risk register. Originally, we did have it as being recommending to the Strategic Risk and Assurance Committee, and then as Becca pointed out, that committee doesn't actually have the authority to do it, but this committee does. So rather than us recommend to that committee, we're actually just approving it ourselves.
Point B then seems to be asking them to do something.
Well,
we're telling them. That's
we're telling them.
Yeah. As long as that's the understanding that they're not getting a choice in the matter.
Yeah.
That's right. So they're noting it so that because they then sort of monitor the risk register.
Yes.
Yeah.
No,
that's the intent. Although I apologise if I got the wording a bit clumsy.
Very good. Good question. Right. Discussion from anyone?
I'm just wondering whether at some point this should actually be a report to the full council, maybe from this committee, because the issue of climate change was quite a debating point at full council last time, which resulted really in this committee being set up. Well, that was one of the results. And it seems like after the LTP, it's not something that needs to be done. Well, maybe it does in advance of that. Have we taken, what measures are we taking in the LTP to deal with the risk of climate change? Just wondering whether this is elevated enough.
Let's take advice on that.
There's no issue with bringing back a noting report. So there's no issue, with bringing back a noting report to council, just as an FYI. Around it being added to the risk register. Is that what you're trying to say?
No, I'm trying to say that the whole council should treat it as if climate change is a strategic risk, I'd like to draw out A, what's the effect on our LTP of that, and B, is there an all of council discussion happening somewhere about it, both governance and management? I mean, look at the numbers that are here from us today. I don't want us to assume that the rest of the council's on board without them being part of the discussion. I'm not saying this is inappropriate what we're doing. I'm just saying maybe we've got to take another step.
Yeah, elevate it, like you said, yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I'm inclined to give staff a couple of minutes just to work something up. I understand what you're saying.
Beef it up
and take it up. Yeah.
Make sure it gets discussed in all the right places by all the people.
Yeah.
I'm wondering also, Margaret, if the adaptation side of our climate strategy, that's eventually going to outline a lot of all of the risks. Is that right?
Yeah, so once the risk assessment's been completed, the adaptation plan will include the risks and then the actions that we'll need to be putting in place.
Yes. Okay, so at that point, that would be good visibility of the tangible impacts risks that we're looking at.
Yes. So the strategic risk element is about looking at what are the key things we need to be considering right now and what are those mitigation strategies we'd have in place. Then you'll have a much broader and more in-depth climate change risk assessment, which will go into much more detail around our operations and services, etc., that have a risk as a result of climate impact or transitions. So obviously the transition to a low carbon economy will have impact on our operations and our business. So we need to consider that as part of our risk assessment as well. But this strategic risk bit is more around the current risks and how we're addressing that right now and what those mitigations are.
Okay.
Okay.
So there wouldn't be any further, usually with strategic risks, we don't have further reporting to council. What's the usual?
It goes through to the Strategic Risk and Assurance Committee. So they meet quarterly as well. They're meeting on Friday, and they will then be looking at where that risk is at and be what the sort of measures are in place and what each of the general managers has responsibility assigned depending on what the risk is.
I guess I'm just sorry.
No, you go.
But worried about the time frame, because if that's too late to get this report and too late to get anything in the LTP. I'm not saying there's nothing in there, but there's not much visibility of that either.
One of the questions I have too,
Sorry,
and it's probably just a procedural thing, but how does the Strategic Risk and Assurance Committee get the climate risk in the first place? Is that captured in our climate action plan, or is it something that we need to work up, or is it they already have that on hand?
So we haven't developed it up yet. So the proposal is, because of the change in dates, the Environment Committee was going to come after the Strategic Risk and Assurance Committee this time. So we're proposing for the March one, we'd work with the relevant staff across the organisation to build up the first review of the strategic risk for climate change.
Okay.
So moving it from that emerging risk into strategic risk, put in place the first round of mitigation measures, which would include doing the detailed climate change risk assessment to get into those kind of priority risks. And that would go up to that committee, and then that would be just updated quarterly with the reporting.
Okay. Okay.
How does that work with the LTP? If there any costs involved?
So if I can answer that, so with the LTP, so it's more than just the risks that we want to consider from an LTP point of view. So in the LTP report, we do reference the climate action plan, and that's in the draft report. So that is referenced, and then the actions relating to the climate action plan we have are part of the LTP budget. It's definitely, so it's there front and centre in terms of one of the key things that we need to respond to. In terms of how it has fed into the development of the LTP budget as well, in all of the activity management plans, we have included a section on climate risk, climate mitigation, and so each of the activity management plans, asset management plans, has responded to the climate risks or the climate issues, and so it's been embedded into the budgets that have been developed, but it also is front and centre in the report itself.
Okay. Yep. No, that sounds good start. Thanks. Just a start.
Right, so any other questions?
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, fine. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering where we're at with what our recommendation looks like. You
Yes, I think
managed to...
Becca's just working on something. So I think Councillor Dave. Councillor Dave. I think what you're looking for is something. Basically, this committee sort of recommending to council to note or to the climate action plan, so that goes to full council. So that the climate action plan is on the council agenda at least. It's not relitigating what this committee has decided, but I think it's asking council to note. Yeah.
So the wording could be something like that, that the committee notes the council will receive a future report on this matter, and I'll just fix the wording up in terms of on this matter for information.
And that measures to respond to climate change are included in the 2022, 32, whatever years, I can't remember, LTP, just so that it's sort of linking that all. Is that possible? Is that sort of just reminding them, hey, you know, you're already got a hook in the LTP for doing something about this? It's not a big deal, the wording, because I think it's anyway.
Yeah, I think it would be brought up in the discussion, wouldn't it? I would imagine that.
Because if it's just the minutes going up,
yeah,
you want probably the actual report to be attached.
Yeah.
Well, I think that the resolution of this committee commits the LTP discussions to take it into consideration. So if we just have the noting recommendation that a future report will come, just to cover everything off to council, would that be, and then that gives you the opportunity to have a further discussion and for council to be aware across the board of the conversations happening, or the requirement for it to be treated as a strategic risk.
Yeah, well, look, I'm not trying to write the whole thing in committee or anything like that, because I think, you know, staff do have it covered. It's more, want to make sure that the rest of the councillors know that they're buying into it, and
yeah, I think
and
that alteration achieves what we're trying to achieve.
Sure, and we were putting together for the LTP something around important projects for climate action, weren't we? Can you just quickly talk about what we're, I guess, in terms of our decision making, and then what's in the LTP document, what guidance there will be around actions that are important for, I guess, aligned with the climate strategy?
Yeah, so in terms of the climate action plan, so the climate roadmap, which kind of talks about the various actions that council was going to take over the next 10 years to deliver its emissions targets. The projects relating to those are in the draft or the proposed budget to be considered by the council at the LTP next week. So that's where they are sitting.
But then in terms of what Dave is, talks about in terms of transport and having it really clear that, if we're wanting to be aligning with our climate action plan, this is what we should be putting priority on or putting our focus on. Were we going to have something summarising that? I don't know, just because we don't have that climate strategy yet, and our climate action plan is kind of just focused on this year. We've got this void in terms of having good direction or guidance.
Yep. So the direction that the document's providing direction to the long-term plan is our vision for Hamilton with the 5 priorities.
Yeah.
One of those priorities is shaping a green city, and within that there's the various focus areas, including climate, including alternative transport, etc. And so through the draft LTP budget, you will see all of the projects that relate to those different priority areas, including the mode shift options, the bike, walking, cycling, public transport investment. So they're all categorised under those priority areas, which should, I think, make it reasonably clear about what projects are proposed that would deliver on that. As you say, we haven't actually adopted a climate strategy as such, but what we have adopted is those vision and priorities, and so that's what we've aligned the LCP proposals to.
Yeah, and my belief too is that it'll come down to the strength of our proposals and referencing our well-beings and our things that we have to do as a full council, and it comes down to those moments in debate, really. But we have a climate action plan. We've got a risk assessment coming up. We've got a draft LTP. We've had initial discussions. I think the next step will come, and we'll just need to make sure that we're well prepared to go into bat. Very good. Can we just have that slightly amended recommendation up on the board, please, so we can have a look? Yep. That board screen.
I'll just see if they're coming now. Just give 2 seconds.
Okay. We've just gone quiet.
It's just a rare moment of contemplation.
Quiet's good.
This meeting's just so dull without me there.
So you can't stand the silence.
No. We're seeing how long we could go before you filled the silence.
Yeah.
What was he like as a child?
Pretty much what you see now, Dave.
Go, go, go.
Your poor parents.
There we go. Thank you. Yeah, approves that the climate change is classified as a strategic risk. Yep. Classified as a strategic risk. For future information report concerning progress on the climate action program and with respect to climate action. Yep. Okay. Does that capture what you're suggesting, Dave?
Yeah,
Just in that noting? Yeah.
I think so. Like I said, the staff are doing it anyway.
Yep.
It's more for
us.
the rest of us.
Yeah. The 90. Cool. Okay. Well, I'll move. Did I have a seconder? Who was it? Dave. Thanks. Anyone wish to speak to the matter? Mark? Now's your opportunity to fill the silence. No? Thank you. Okay. Thanks, Mayor Paula.
Just very, very quickly, in actual fact, there again, just alerting people to the fact that the community let us know how important this topic was to them. And we've got a very youthful population, and they're expecting some serious action in respect to climate. And so to do anything less than you're proposing would be to miss the mark of public expectation and our obligation. So, I see there's two things. We're obligated to do this work. We're also morally obligated to do what the public have been quite clear about. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor Paula. Look, I don't wish to speak at all. Anyone else? Okay. We'll vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Those against?
Yeah. No. The motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And now we're just moving to exclude the public. So item 11, I'll move that we exclude the public, seconded by Councillor Sarah, those in favour, please raise your hand. Those against? It's carried.
Yeah, this is the minutes.
There's no one here, is